Oh boy, I haven't done my Spanish lesson. I feel like that's cutting my head off. Maybe I should back up. It's still cutting my head off. Word up, people. So, let me introduce myself. Oh, wait, hold on. Hold on. My name is Eric Love, but for the purposes of this video, you can call me Eric Shane Love. You can just call me Eric, but Eric Shane Love is my author name, mainly because the URL ericlove.com was already taken. I am an aspiring author, and what I plan to do is what I plan to do is tell you about my process. So, this is just an introduction, and I will get into the process in detail. But as a little bit of background information for me, I am a videographer, a freelance videographer, photographer, do a little bit of graphic design, a little bit of social media management, although, and this is true, I hate social media. Just hate it. And I hate that I live in a world where it is mandated that I be online and I be engaged in social media. If I want to be productive or successful, I have to implement those various social media tools, and I despise it. Which I'm sure is going to become a problem later this year when I am actually trying to market myself as an author, a self-published author. So I freelance as a living. I worked in a nonprofit for 15 years full-time, for an additional 3 years after that, and began freelancing January 1st, 2016. And mostly I worked with nonprofits, and I still work with several nonprofits. And the businesses I work with that aren't small profits, nonprofits, are small businesses, small family businesses, startups, those kinds of things, because I love helping tell people stories. My cat is here. My cat's name is Chuck. Come here, Chuck. Don't be weird, Chuck. Oh, sorry. I sat on his tail and then tried to pick him up. So this is my cat. I have a cat. I have Chuck because if I didn't have Chuck, I would have like 50 mice because my house is in the middle of a field. I'm actually a dog person. I have 3 dogs now. Maddie, which is a Basset Hound. She's about 150 years old. She's the queen. Bella is a little mutt who's my cuddle buddy. Ooh, my cuddle buddy. She sleeps with me and cuddles every night. And then I also have Hot Breath Eugene. He is an enormous idiot dog that is called Hot Breath Eugene because his biggest skill is generating hot breath and breathing it in your face. All right, so enough about my pets, but Chuck is going to be a distraction because he's a bit of a jerk. I've been freelancing since January 1st, 2016, and but my passion is and has always been writing. And I worked at a nonprofit, like I said, it was a youth home for boys who would otherwise be incarcerated. I worked there, like I said, for 15 years full time. And I had a friend, a boy at the youth home at one point who was a musician and an artist. And he would always talk about how music and art was his passion. That was his reason for existence. I don't think he ever used that phrase, reason for existence, but I would always kind of fuss at him and say, you know what, you demonstrate what your priorities are by what you do, not by what you say your priorities are. Meaning, don't tell me that music and art is what's most important to you if you never take the time and discipline yourself to make music or make art. And then it hit me. I said that my passion was writing, but I never made time for it. I never did. So I don't know the timeline exactly here, but I had a friend who was also an aspiring author at the time, and she and I made a deal that we would compare notes and kind of hold each other accountable. And so for a solid 6 months, I would say, I worked on an outline for a book, and I had this very, very big project that I would work on at the beginning, that it would end at the beginning of the Christmas season, so the first week of December every year. And I would work like 60 to 80 hours a week on that for like 2 months straight at the youth home. So after that, I would always take a vacation. So this particular year, I'd been working on an outline for 6 months for a book. And I took a 2-week vacation in December. I don't know when this was, 2012, maybe. Let's just say it was 2012, because it really doesn't matter. I took that 2-week vacation and I wrote an entire novel over the course of 2 weeks. And my attitude at the time was write it, read over everything, and then release it into the wild. I liked it raw. I liked it to feel edgy and rough. I didn't want to over polish it. And that could have been a reaction to the way my friend wrote, who would send me chapters that she had written. And by the time I received and read the chapters, she would have already sent me a completely new draft of the exact same chapter that she had rewritten from scratch, because she never left anything well enough alone. She would never move on. I mean, she would get like 6 or 8 chapters in and chunk it all and start over. And I was the opposite. I would just start writing and then I wouldn't stop until I had finished the book, which I didn't even know if I had it in me to finish a novel. So that was my first goal, was to prove to myself whether I could or couldn't stick with a story long enough to finish a novel. That 2-week period, I realized that writing makes me high, literally high. I love it. It's something I would do for 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and I would be filled with energy at the end of the day rather than dead. And keep in mind, this was coming off of a 2-month period of me working between 60 and 80 hours every week, Monday through Sunday, not a day off. So so I proved to myself that I could write and I could sustain a story for a novel length, and that I loved it. But it would take me a couple years to realize that that whole write it and release it into the wild idea was bullshit. Total and utter shit. I'm not exaggerating, because reading back through that book is painful to me now. So that was my first stint at writing a novel, and that was back in, let's just say again, for the sake of argument, 2012. Well, I had another germ of an idea for a series of loosely connected, what I thought would be short stories, a fantasy series of short stories that I was going to write and collect into a book. The first one in the series was going to be called The Scarecrow Hunters, which was based on a dream that I had, and I will get into that dream later. That's not important for the sake of this video, because I'm timing myself, because I know that I'll talk forever, and I'll talk forever. Like, no question. I'm going to talk forever. Except that this thing's going to remind me and say, hey, dumbass, shut the fuck up. Oh, God. What was I talking about? Oh, my God. I need someone to monitor me. I shoot video for a living, but I'm not planning on editing this. Sorry about your luck. Either you like it and you want to watch it, or you don't, because I don't have time to edit it. I might edit it a little bit. I'm probably not going to edit it. Let me cut to the chase. So I wanted to work on this series, a fantasy series of short stories that I was going to have a collection. And that kind of evolved into a book of novellas. And then eventually it just turned into, each of these mini stories was a novel. And I actually wrote the first book in the series, The Scarecrow Hunters. I would say I wrote that probably back in 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, somewhere around there. I have no idea. I wrote it. I could look that up. Maybe I will. But I moved on then, and I wrote the second book in the series. And when I finished that and I wrote the second book in the series, I'm going to say I wrote that in 2018 because that feels right. That actually feels pretty good. I think I wrote the second book in the series, which was called The Singing Bones, in 2018. And as I was writing The Singing Bones, I realized that I had elevated my writing skills significantly, and I could not, in good conscience, self-publish the first book, The Scarecrow Hunters. So I went back and I rewrote The Scarecrow Hunters. I pretty much had rewritten it at that point from scratch. Now, just to be clear, The Scarecrow Hunters was based on a dream I had in 2001. I think I said I was not going to talk about this, but I had been writing that story in some form or another for about a decade. Pretty close. By the time I ended up writing the second book in what was going to be a series. What is a series? What is going to be a series? When I finished The Singing Bones, I realized I had to go back and rewrite The Scarecrow Hunters, and I did. And at that point, it had been a short story in like 3 or 4 iterations and had been a novel in at least 3 iterations. Not deleting it and starting from scratch, but always refreshing it, rewriting it, reshaping it. And I realized that there were issues with that story because of the way that story was told, the way I had always told it from the first iteration to the last at that point, that made it difficult to tell. And I didn't know what the problem was. And I knew that I needed professional help. So I did some research. I found a website called Reedsy.com, REEDSY.com. And I began pursuing the idea of hiring an editor. And so I found an editor and I hired her to do a developmental edit of The Scarecrow Hunters. And the first thing that she said in her notes when she finished is, "You got some great content here, but this is not 1 book, it's 2. And here are the problems with it." And she broke it down and a light went off and I was like, oh my God, that's it. I finally figured out. It was so simple too. It wasn't like brain surgery. I regret having said it was not like brain surgery because I'm not a big fan of cliches, but I use them all the time. It was so obvious. It was so obvious once she said it, but I was so close to it. And keep in mind, I had been burying myself in this story for about 10 years at least at that point. So, So at that point, I did chunk it and started from scratch. And what was The Scarecrow Hunters is now 2 full-length manuscripts. The first one in the series is called The Scarecrow Hunters. The second one in the series is called A Greedy Shadow. And now the third book is called The Singing Bones. So here's where I am in this process right now. Today, I actually opened book 3, The Singing Bones, for the first time since 2018 when I finished that manuscript. I'm guessing 2018. Sounds bad. Sounds right. I've already committed. It's totally right. There's no question. 2018. That's when I finished that damn thing. Okay. I have no idea. So today, I actually edited the prologue of The Singing Bones because my writing journey since 2018 has been kind of amazing. And here's what I'll tell you about 2018. No, about 2020. Today is January 3rd, 2021. And so as you know, unless you're just waking up from a coma, 2020 was, oh my God, what was it? Who knows? We don't know. It was a nightmare. It was, oh my God. It was like being in a really, really bad science fiction movie where nothing happens. It's boring as hell. But for all the ways that 2020 absolutely sucked, and just for the record, I am actually currently getting over COVID. Because why not? That's my dog. She's going to want to. Jesus. Bella, babe. Give me 5 minutes, honey. No, don't. Oh, crap. Don't fuss at me, lover. 5 minutes. I'm the parent. I don't get manipulated. Watch this. That's a lie. In 2020, my freelance business was, hey, my camera just got distracted. Damn it, I got distracted. My freelance business tanked. If you remember, I said most of my businesses were either small businesses. Most of my clients are either small clients. Most of my clients are either small businesses or nonprofits. Well, most small businesses couldn't afford to pay someone like me to do what I do when they had to shut their doors because of the pandemic. So I was in a bad way, and I barely made it through 2020 just because of unemployment and because my mortgage was put on furlough and I just stopped paying people. That's not entirely true, but this is not a money vlog or whatever this is. This is about writing. So if you want to know about money stuff, go to some other channel. So in 2020, I had a lot of downtime. So here's what I did. I wrote 2 full-length manuscripts, start to finish. Now they were, the story was very fleshed out in my mind. I knew this story frontwards and backwards, or at least I thought I did. But I took my editor's comments from her developmental edit of The Scarecrow Hunters, and I broke it down. I divided it into 2 halves, into 2 books, which I didn't want to do at first, but it made the most sense. And what I realized is there was a whole story in book 2 that I had not even scratched the surface of. So I'll get into those details later because that's not in this video, in a later video. But what I did is I wrote 2 full-length manuscripts. So here is where I am right now as of January 3rd, 2021. Book 1 in my series. The series is called Glint and Shade. Book 1, The Scarecrow Hunters. I wrote a new manuscript for that book in 2020, in spring of 2020. I hired my editor. I hired my editor to edit that book again. The second edit, I paid for a copy edit, which is less intensive, so less expensive than a developmental edit. But in talking with her since, I agree that a developmental edit is probably more valuable and is worth me investing that extra money. So I have written that manuscript for book 1, The Scarecrow Hunters. My editor has edited it. I have gone back and made revisions on her edit. And now the final step is getting it proofread before I do the layout. I also, just for the record, and I'll talk about this too, I have a friend who I've hired to illustrate the series, and he has illustrated the entire first book. And there's one package that I have left to get in the mail from him because, we use snail mail to deliver these things. That's a whole other story, man. But I have all the illustrations. He's finished the cover. I haven't seen the cover yet. Oh, I'm excited. But that's Logan, my homeboy Logan. Shout out to Logan. So that's book 1. Book 1 has been worked through several stages of my personal edits, which I will go into in detail eventually. It has also gone through what was a copy edit. Now I would hire my editor for a developmental edit, but I'd already paid her for a copy edit, so that's good enough. And that story was good. It was in very, very good shape because that part of the story was well shaped, well formed. So now I've made my corrections based on her edits, and the last step that I'm going to do is I'm going to pay to get it proofread because I'm a freelancer and I don't have money to just throw at this thing. So I have to be very I have to be diligent. I have to be diligent, and I also have to be thrifty. But also, I'm not going to cut corners because that's one of the things I learned, and that's one of the points of me telling you this story. is I'm going to start now, and nobody knows me from Adam's House Cat, and it's not like at the end of 2021 I'm going to be a famous author, but I am, by the end of 2021, going to be a self-published author. And that's the thing. And so I'm going to record these videos between now and then and show you the process, and hopefully it'll help you, because I would have loved to have someone like this tell me about their process. In fact, I did find a podcast also from the website readsy.com. What is that podcast called? I'll tell you what. I'll tell you what the name of that podcast is in another video, because I don't want to take the time, because I'm already 19 minutes in. Oh my God, I'm almost done. Book 2, A Greedy Shadow. Hey, focus, camera. Book 2, A Greedy Shadow was a huge surprise to me when I wrote that, and I literally wrote it from scratch. Like I started with a blank page. For all intents and purposes, another cliche that I hate, for all intents and purposes, I started with a completely blank slate when I started that book. I didn't copy and pull any past segments. That's not entirely true. But all of that is irrelevant for the sake of this. As of tomorrow, January 4th, is when my editor begins her developmental edit of that book, which I'm excited about, because she read it in the first format where the books 1 and 2 were one story. And this thing is so much better now than it was then. Like, it is worlds better, which is why having professional insight and having a professional editor is not a luxury. It is a necessity. So I read, like right now I am reading a self-published author who clearly self-published, and he wrote a series, and it's an interesting series and I like it, but it is riddled with mistakes. It is riddled with grammatical mistakes. It is riddled with typos. It has segments where there are these long descriptive episodes that are unnecessary and really don't help tell the story. And I get annoyed by that. And I read it because I want to learn both from this author's mistakes and their successes. But I see there's a difference. The thing that I know will be most likely to elevate my writing above every crackpot who's self-publishing on Amazon right now is for me to invest the time and the energy and the discipline and the money to get this thing edited correctly, which means I can't skimp out, period. Tomorrow, my editor begins her developmental edit of book 2, and I began today my deep edit, what I call a deep edit of book 3, The Singing Bones. So I'll go into more detail on all of that. But this is my journey, and this is the first video where I start telling you about all this stuff. And I hope you find it interesting, and if you don't, then, oh my God, what are you still doing here? Well, if you're not interested, then go somewhere else. There's tons of stuff on YouTube or Facebook or whatever. I mean, social media runs the world. Anyway, peace, home skillet, and I'll see you next time. Focus. Not you, the camera. It keeps losing focus.